Welcome to the Nuff Said podcast. This is a special news episode because there were so many freaking announcements today. We almost had to have one based off this last week, but today just blew the lid off the thing. So we have a really special episode. I'm not even going to bother with the special name tonight. If anyone wants to, feel free, but we have quite a lineup. Let's hear who's here. I'll go first. I'm Rob Southgate. With me,
Jack Wengroski,
Alil Kanitsa,
and Charlie Esser.
Look at that. We've got Charlie, our blogger slash super connectivity podcaster, with all three of us. This is a first. Unprecedented. You know, I tried to get Jonathan on here too. It would have been the entire Nuff Said team, but he's recording another podcast tonight. Obviously, there was something more important than all this Marvel news.
There is nothing more
There is nothing more important.
Nothing.
No. Oh my gosh. I have been dying for this conversation all day. Poor Martha had to hear me. We were actually in a meeting when all the news was breaking, and I'm talking to this guy and I'm reading the thing and I'm going, as soon as we finish, we get out in the car and I just started spewing it. She's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I think I went off for 10 minutes about Inhumans, and I'm sure she's just ready to get rid of me. Oh my gosh, guys, can you believe this news today?
It's exciting.
Yay!
Okay,
Obviously, we all share the same intensity.
Let's go one at a time here. So first of all, let's address the one that Alil already burst our bubble and said, well, it hasn't happened yet. They announced the Doctor Strange movie, but they did not today confirm that it's the Cumberbatch. Is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct.
Now, yesterday it was all over that it was confirmed. It was saying Deadline is the one that came up with this. It said that it's been confirmed. It has not been officially announced, but it is definitely him. I'll tell you what, my gut instinct is that is accurate. They just didn't make the announcement. Probably they didn't want to get it lost in all this, because today was really about announcing the films in over the next few years.
I don't know about that, though, because they did announce a casting tonight.
Yeah,
Black Panther.
But that wasn't when they announced that casting. I saw the name and I still don't remember who it is compared to Benedict Cumberbatch. You don't want this to get lost in the shovel. You want to be able to lay this one out and get juice about it again.
I don't know. Chadwick Boseman is a huge get. I mean, he is.
Wait, okay, who is he?
He was in 42. He was in that new James Brown movie that came out this past summer. Oh,
it's that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's an awesome choice. Was he the one that they kept rumoring was going to play Black Panther?
Yeah, he was rumored quite a bit, and I remember when I first saw 42, that was that was who I thought should play it as well, because I thought he looked it. I thought he can act it. He was a very good actor.
Okay, Alil, it's not just because he's black, is it?
Of course not.
Because you're like, he looked it, really? You're not going to get into one of those Sam Jackson's, you remember when he got the argument with Sam Smith or whatever that guy is?
Was it Lawrence Fishburne?
Yeah, what did they call him, Lawrence Fishburne? You're not going to get into one of those. Like, hey,
no,
you were great in that one. No, I'm Sam Jackson.
No, not at all. I mean, he does look like him, not because he is African American, but I mean, he's a huge get. I mean, that's why.
Well, now that I know who it is, that is a huge get. I didn't know who the actor was, but now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, he's phenomenal. I
think Cumberbatch is signed, or they're ready to sign. I think they're still hashing out how many movies, because we found out with Chadwick Boseman that he is signed on for 5 Marvel pictures.
For 5?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Wow. Now, he's basically, for those that don't know who the Black Panther is, he is probably the closest to being Batman in the Marvel Universe. Would you say that's right?
Well, I'd say he goes a little beyond Batman. He is essentially obviously, he's not Batman because he's not a street level hero. He is in his own way really almost especially in many of his interpretations now, he's moving on a global scale. Your best comparison, I'd say, with Black Panther is he's Doctor Doom as a good guy. That's
a good one. Okay.
He's the world's smartest man. He's the king of his own country. However, he's also very suspicious of outsiders, which is the whole Wakandan way, you know, and very very unsure about how far he can trust all the people that want to get a piece of Wakandan vibranium, which of course is the rarest substance on Earth, as we learned in the first Captain America movie.
Now, do we think that he's going to pop up in Age of Ultron?
No, but he is confirmed to be in Cap 3 Civil War.
Okay, because I know that, I mean, they keep showing the images of Cap's shield being broken, and that's made out of vibranium. So
I could certainly see him in a post-credit scene.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, do you think they're going to give us that, or do you think they're going to just say, nope, this is who it is, and there may be a reference to him?
I think there might be a reference, because Feige also confirmed that Claw was in Age of Ultron with the vibranium that was played by Andy Serkis. They confirmed that was.
Oh, they did.
Ulysses
I didn't
Claw.
know that. They did confirm that it's Claw.
From what I read online and when I was looking through the live blog posting, yes.
Okay. So that's confirmed, yet we still have not got the confirmation on Doctor Strange. Okay. But we know Doctor Strange is definitely happening. Okay,
Yeah.
so now that we got the Doctor Strange thing out of the way, let's go piece by piece from this. I'm looking at on Newsarama, they have a post here, which is Marvel announces all these different movies, and they kind of go picture by picture. So I can't say which one is most exciting to me, because every one of them, I'm like, yep, you already got my money. I think one of the biggest announcements is Avengers Infinity War, Part 1 and Part 2. We're going to have 2 Avengers movies in a 12-month period.
Yeah,
Actually, within 366 days of each other.
Yes. Well, I think that's I think that's what they've been building towards this whole time, is the Infinity War. In fact, I think that Captain America 3, the Civil War, is going to tie, especially since it comes directly after Avengers, it's going to tie directly into that, in the sense. And this is my big thing. I didn't want to believe that when they were first giving the rumors of Civil War, and they were saying, they said Robert Downey Jr. was in there. I said, well, they can't do Civil War. There just aren't enough heroes. There aren't enough superhumans in this world to really
to have the
warrant
effect that Civil War should really have. Right.
Exactly. But it strikes me because, and this is when we see the Avengers trailer, there's a couple things that strike me about this. One is that although we see the Hulk fighting the Hulkbuster armor, when we later see Banner, he seems weak. He seems depowered. He seems very much depowered. And I'm thinking that early in the film, what we're going to see Scarlet Witch use her magic hex powers to depower him. And then at the end of the film, when Ultron is taking over, I get the feeling she's going to grab the magic stone that gave her and Quicksilver her powers, and she's going to say, essentially more mutants or more Marvels or more miracles.
Okay.
And that's going to basically awaken this huge section of the population. So you're going to suddenly have all these superhumans, and so all these people who are going to be suddenly empowered are going to rush in, and that's how they're going to defeat Ultron. But then you're going to have this problem of just this rampant number of superhumans, some of whom are trying to be heroes, some who are trying to be villains, many of whom are causing all kinds of problems, probably even culminating in a speedball Stanford accident that leads right into the Civil War problem that we're going to see in Captain America 3. Because and that gives you how you get to that rapid movement where you're going from this, So
you think this is all going to go into motion at the end of Ultron, and that's that is really going to be it? Because I wonder about that, though. I wonder about all of this, how this is going to play out, because think about Ultron. This is a big movie with lots of stuff going on. That type of ending is like overload. Are we going to have this sense of just like this overwhelming thing?
Well, I think what you're going to be having is you're going to be having every single film moving almost seamlessly into the next.
As if you could just marathon these things out and they're just one big story. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin Feige actually addressed Civil War in a Q&A after. and because he was asked this exact question, how can you have Civil War without all these heroes? And he said that the title is Civil War. They're going to take some theories from Civil War, but the Civil War is not superhero registration mainly. It's going to be on the philosophies on how to protect and who to govern and who should oversee the superheroes. And there's actually a scene that was also kind of leaked that I got to watch, and it's Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. Chris Evans is chopping wood, and they're talking about like philosophy, and I think Downey said that he doesn't trust anybody who doesn't have a dark side to themselves,
right?
And they said that that's kind of a little bit of the leading into their fight between what to do and what's right. So I don't know if they're going to go into opening it up with more miracles and doing it that way. I think it's going to be more grounded and more philosophical in regards to just patrolling the humans, because I think with Age of Ultron they get into trouble because Tony reopens the project with the drones, and he's trying to use these drones to protect, and they go bad, or one goes bad and takes over. I mean, that's the issue.
Right.
So now Cap, and now the thing is who should be the one responsible for taking care of everyone or for protecting.
Right.
And I think that's where the Civil War is going to be. I think they're going to take little pieces, but I don't think it's going to be.
It's not going to match it exactly. Sure.
Yeah, as closely as.
So you're thinking it's not going to be as many miracles flooding in, Charlie. You're thinking it is.
Well, I just think it's hard to get to a superhero registration, if you don't have.
But what if that's just a small part of what's actually happening in this film? What if that's adding to the tension, and rather than resolve it in Cap 3, this is kind of the starting point, and we see this tension kind of leading through, all the way up, through how far, who knows, through Avengers 9, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not resolved in one film. Maybe it's more, we see this kind of beginning, we see why it happens. There's another bigger story that's going on. Yeah, Iron Man and Cap can have it out, and then by the time Avengers comes around, they have to come back together. I wonder if Tony Stark will get upset and leave, and that's how he'll end up in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I really want that to happen. Can you tell?
Yeah.
I like how you get dismissed on that one. And Jack, you're just silent. Did you fall asleep?
Well, I was just. I thought
like you were underwater.
I was for a second. I just had some Gatorade and it went down the wrong pipe. But I thought somebody was going to jump on it. The conversation really hasn't taken a lull in quite a bit. But yeah, do you really think that they're going to kind of dump the load of the whole Civil War in this film, or do you think it's farther down the line?
I think it's further down the line. I think it's going to bleed into all the movies, leading to them having to get. And this is why I'm thinking Infinity is 2 parts, because I'm thinking part of whoever we're going to be following in this is going to be in part 1, and then it's going to take the 2 parts to get them together.
Right. Well, yeah. And are they going to continue? I guess what Rob's asking, are they going to continue to tie in something to Guardians of the Galaxy now that they've not only introduced it to us, but they've got at least 1 or 2 of the Infinity Stones?
So actually, on Super Connectivity, Charlie, you went through all the Infinity Stones. We talked all about that.
So we have detail. 3 confirmed Infinity Stones: the Tesseract, the Ether, and the and what I believe is the Soul Gem, which is the one from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
You have the possible Infinity Stone of the Mind Stone, which may or may not be an Infinity Stone, hasn't been confirmed yet, which is the stone in Loki's staff. And then there's 2 others that we can probably assume that Thanos has one, and one that is lost somewhere else. Though we'll probably, I would assume we'll see something of that in Doctor Strange, whatever the missing stone is in Doctor Strange, because that would make the most sense.
Yeah. Well, I
Okay,
think we'll
so-
get one there, and then we'll get the final. We'll get that answer about Loki's stone in Thor.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's take what we know about the stones and go back to Guardians. Doesn't that kind of preclude that is going to have to be tied in some way in at least one of these two movies, or at least if not in the two, it has to be in the future.
Well, yeah. Well, certainly, once you go into the stones, you have to get back to the stone that we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy. I highly doubt the Guardians are going to be just left out in space to only be in space, and they're not going to interact with the rest of the Marvel universe.
Oh yeah, not a chance. I think that at the end of Guardians 2, we're going to have them making an appearance on Earth, and then it leads into Infinity War, where they're going to be fully. You've got 2 movies for Infinity War. You know, I think you're going to have a big crossover, and the Guardians are going to play a major part. It looks like we're not getting Inhumans until after that point, but I bet it's whatever sets in motion at the end of Avengers. Because look, the next 2 are Captain Marvel and the Inhumans. So I think we're getting more spacey stuff and this deeper thing going on at that point.
Well, remember the Inhumans start on Earth.
Right. I'm just okay. That blew my theory. Why did we have Charlie on? He calls me on everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they get into space eventually, and of course they're space tied. They're bred by
right,
the
but
Kree.
they do start here. Right. Well,
they do
that
start
also
here.
goes into like your Atlantean thing, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, well of course, because everything starts on Earth. That's why Earth is so important in the Marvel universe, because
We're always kicking up
the Celestials, came to Earth and said these things are important, and sort of marked the Earth as being the place that's going to grow all these amazing superhuman things, which we are now coming to fruition in the MCU.
Right.
And we did see the Celestial in Guardians of the Galaxy, which looked really awesome, by the way. It was always that worry that when they do a Celestial, that it's either going to have to be completely redesigned or look really stupid. But they had a big guy in cosmic armor standing there wielding the Soul Stone, passing judgment on a planet, and it looked awesome. And I have nothing but respect for their desire to both be to honor the original artistic design, which I think Kirby originally designed the Celestials, and it looks like Kirby anyway, and to honor that design and to use it, and so that when you were sitting in the theater, you saw that and you said, "Oh, look, it's a Celestial." Probably someone who knows more than me could actually, "Oh, look, that's that one Celestial," and actually knows what that Celestial's name is, because they do all have names.
Or there could be people like us that know less than you that would go, "Oh, look, it's a guy."
Yeah.
Although I left you out of that, you probably would have guessed. No, I know what Celestial it is.
Yes.
That's my Lil voice. Do you like how I went all nerd on it?
I did. It was very, very good.
Hey, you know what? I'm looking at this list, and it starts at Civil War because that's what they talked about today, but it's kind of like they kind of shuffled Ant-Man because we've got Age of Ultron, and then we've got Ant-Man coming right after it. I think Ant-Man is going to be an important part of this puzzle, too.
Well, entirely possible. Well, of course, what's interesting about Ant-Man is essentially our bridge movie within the concept of superhumans in the MCU. Because if what we've been told is correct, then I'm blanking on his name now. The actor who's playing Hank Pym,
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas was a hero in the 1960s, which is going to be cool. So we're going to have our 66 Ant-Man.
You know what that does.
Fighting
that starts a whole conversation on this show.
I was just about to say,
I know.
68 Ant-Man.
I checked it right there. So you're going to have the flashback to that, and that kind of strange world that existed in that time after Captain America, but before Iron Man, where there were these costume beings and these superhuman beings that have just always been there in the woodwork. And of course, that builds into, which of course can right again build into Civil War. This idea that actually, no, even though we haven't had maybe a huge number, these superhumans have been around for a while. We have always had superhumans here.
Well, and I think we're learning that on S.H.I.E.L.D.
Fighters here.
I think we're learning that on Shield because
Yes.
they've dropped names, they've made little references, and just even watching this team, coming off the one tonight, watching Mockingbird and watching what they're doing, you're going, there's a lot going on here, more than just, hey, these people are good at fighting.
Oh, yes. Well, they directly mention several things with Mockingbird, and I tweeted this out while I was watching it, that, they seem to be crossing her and Finesse. Finesse is a character in who was from Avengers Academy, recently was in a was she in Avengers Arena? Yeah, she was in Avengers Arena, and then now Avengers Undercover, who essentially she's theoretically the daughter of the Taskmaster. She is actually dressed and set up very similarly to Mockingbird. She uses the batons as well, but
Do you think
like
we're getting
Taskmaster,
Taskmaster here?
well, Taskmaster, of course,
I like
has
how you said it
photographic
clearly, and I
reflexes.
sounded like I was drunk when I said it, but never
Yes.
mind.
Has photographic reflexes, and they mention, Mockingbird has this habit of picking things up very quickly,
Right.
and also mentioned she remembers every instant of her past, which is something that has come up with both Finesse and Taskmaster. Although they actually have a secondary problem, which is they also tend to forget who they are, which is because their brains are storing so much other data. They
Oh yeah,
actually
that's
forget.
my excuse too.
Yes, but that's a whole other thing. But they seem to be crossing that, which is sort of building some kind of superhumanity into Mockingbird, which
Yeah.
is always nice when you can sort of retroactively make a character superhuman.
So, before we go on with these, I want to talk about another thing that's conspicuously missing here. As long as we're talking Mockingbird, where's the Black Widow movie on this slate? Is there room? Do they have room to fit another movie in here, or do you think they're just not going to do it?
Feige addressed that as well.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah, he said that characters like the Black Widow and Hulk and Hawkeye have prominent roles in a lot of these movies, so they do not need their own movie.
So they don't need a standalone Black Widow if she's going to be a main character, say, in Civil War.
Right, or Avengers 2, or how she was a main character in Winter Soldier, and so on and so forth. And we know Hawkeye is already going to be in Civil War as well. So, I mean, who knows how they use these films going forward?
Yeah, can I just say he's wrong? I would love to see a Hawkeye movie based on the current series. I would love to see a Black Widow movie that is standalone, not a flashback, although I do like the idea of the flashback when we see her with the Winter Soldier. I want to see standalone, solid stories out of these because they're there. And making them play, even though it's a second banana that is a big part. I mean, she was second banana in Cap 2. I thought she kind of stole the movie, but she was second banana. Do I need a Falcon movie now that I said the words? Yes. But I was going to say no. But
No,
I do
you
need a
would
Falcon
never
movie.
say
But you're sort of getting into the problem here, which is that really any one of these characters could have their own movie. They all
is that a problem, or is that how it should be?
Well, it's not that it's a problem. It's just that there's limited. They have limited time and resources. Even as nearly infinite as they have, they do. There is a cap, and
well, I think like Black
it's-
Widow, they could do a Netflix series. It wouldn't cost them as much because you don't have to do the effects, and that might be the way to go. That might actually be. They didn't make any announcements about their Netflix stuff. They haven't even rolled out the first phase, but they have multiple phases for that.
Oh yes. Well, Black Widow, I believe, did time in the Defenders, as did the Hulk.
Right.
So I think since we're getting Doctor Strange, we may see the Hulk and Black Widow popping up there as well.
I actually thought when you said that like they're going to be prominent in these other films, I thought, okay, we're not talking Avengers, we're talking the other films. I think Doctor Strange is the perfect place for Hulk.
Well, obviously.
I mean, I really want to see. I'm like, that's where everyone that wants this Hulk story, you're not getting World War Hulk. The Hulk Strange movie, that's the one we're looking for.
I think that is very possible. I mean, in fact, I can see, when we think about, Doctor Strange origin, he's a medical doctor, meaning he's a scientist. And so it's entirely possible that him and Banner have crossed paths. So it's entirely possible that, whatever we have coming out of Avengers, Banner could seek out his old colleague who has some understanding of whatever is going on with the Scarlet Witch. I mean, I think Scarlet Witch leading into Doctor Strange is something of a no-brainer,
Sure.
depending on how they present Doctor Strange. Now, they've said that they're not going to do the origin of Doctor Strange, so that when we meet Doctor Strange, he's already the master of the mystic arts. They'll probably have to explain something, but it's not going to be Doctor Strange as the surgeon and going through the whole rigmarole of becoming Doctor Strange.
You know what? I'm fine with some flashback here and there. I don't
Exactly.
and that's something that Marvel's done a nice job of. I don't feel like I'm getting inundated with origin stories at this point. Whereas, in the past that used to be the modus operandi, and DC falls into that hole a lot. Hey, let's tell the origin story again.
Well, that's because they keep on rebooting it. So
Right.
they want to make every time they reboot a character, they have to retell the origin so that you're not saying, well, wait, in the last movie, the origin was this. So they have
Right.
to say, no, this is our new origin. In this one, Kevin Costner's a real jerk about the powers and, wants to hide Superman for some reason.
Yeah,
And, that's which is very different than other origins we had gotten for Pa Kent in the past. There's actually a really good comparison I saw from the original Superman series, like the very first,
the George Reeve one.
Actually, I think it might even be before George Reeve. I'm not quite sure, but it was the very first or very early Superman series, and they had him with Pa Kent, where actually, just like in Man of Steel, he saves his dad from a tornado. But in that one, he actually does save his dad. He does save Pa Kent from the tornado. And then Pa Kent literally tells him, with great power comes great responsibility.
No!
Yes, and you have got to go out there into the world and use these powers to help people. It was very fascinating when I saw that, but it's very interesting to see how that story has changed over the ensuing decades.
So, was there any news about Guardians 2? I know they said that in Avengers we're going to see the lineup starting to change. What about Guardians? Are we going to see the same lineup? Are they going to add more Guardians? Was there any news about Guardians 2?
No, just the announcement of
Just
that
the
they
date.
moved the date. Yeah,
Yeah,
because initially it was supposed to be that July, and now it's going to be
it's going to be
opening
May.
of the summer, May. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Well,
pretty
and
confident.
they
in
moved
Guardians.
Thor Ragnarok into July 28th.
Right.
Which is really interesting. If we go back, remember that leaked list that we talked about? I think, you and I did the show where we talked about the list that came out of San Diego.
Yeah.
That was one of the leaked ones. In fact, this matches almost exactly that list, except for World War Hulk.
Well, yeah, and they.
I mean, if I remember right, it's like it said Civil War. It had the Infinity War. It had, I mean, really.
No, I think it was just called Infinity at that time.
Right. But it's the same. It was the same idea. That where it really missed was Captain Marvel and World War Hulk.
Right.
So do you think they moved World War Hulk out because everybody's in a race to get this female-driven superhero movie out there?
I'm going to go out on a limb on this. I'm going to say I don't know if it's necessarily a race because
I think it is.
Well, you know what? I'll say this: if it was a race, Marvel would do a Black Widow film. If Marvel said,
but I think
we've got
they
to get
tested
this
the
out
waters. I think they tested the waters with Cap too, and I think that they are putting other things in motion and playing their cards a different way. I think that the when I say a race, I think they've already won the race by giving us Ms. Marvel later, or Captain Marvel, or whatever they're calling it at this point. Which one are they doing? Is it Ms. Marvel? It's Captain Marvel.
It's Captain Marvel.
By doing Captain Marvel where they are, even though it's a year after Wonder Woman and a year after whatever Sony's female Spider-Man thing is, they've already established Black Widow, and they're doing it with Mockingbird on TV. They're winning that race there. But when I say there's a race, I mean, if they didn't they could have gone another way. They could have done Black Widow early in this and done the fan service thing and made that happen. But I think this way they're still winning the race. And
Well, what
I
they're
think
doing is
Wonder
they're-
Woman is playing catch up.
But isn't Wonder Woman coming out in 2017 and Miss Marvel's coming out in 2018?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
So I don't think
what
Marvel's.
Marvel is doing. I'm sorry. Well, what you can argue is Marvel is not winning the race for speed, but winning the race on points. If you see it as Marvel is going to tell a better story with Ms. Marvel because she's built out as part of the entire MCU, rather than the essentially what I'll say is everyone else is racing, and Marvel is being sure, and it's the tortoise and the hare. DC or Warner's and Sony are racing to get somewhere, but Marvel knows that they're just going to stick with what they're doing, and they're going to move forward. Because if they wanted, they could do a really solid, really great female superhero story with the Black Widow. They could have made the Black Panther story, the story of Shuri, which is the Black Panther's sister, who was the Black Panther in the current Marvel. She's the current ruler of Wakanda now that who you normally think of as the Black Panther sort of abdicated the throne and became king of the dead. So they had all these things where they could have jumped in and said, "Oh yeah, we'll have our female superhero first." And what they're doing is they're for whatever reason choosing to stick with telling these broader stories or these bigger stories, which is why I think when they're giving us this list, it's not, oh, here's this character who's going to get a movie and here's this character who's going to get a movie. I think they're telling us, here's how every film is going to fit together. At the end of Avengers,
they're putting pieces on the chessboard, which I think the others are not. The others are trying to play catch up. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, so saying, oh, they got rid of World War Hulk to win the race is no. I think that World War Hulk was always going to be a tough film to do. Not the least of which just because it builds in such a universe that it's hard to play in. Now, all that said, you could get elements of World War Hulk in the Captain Marvel story because, of course, you could have Hulk sent to another planet. Maybe that's how we meet Captain Marvel in some way, or you could have something going on there. For all we know, at the end of Doctor Strange, after Doctor Strange defeats Dormammu with the help of the Hulk, using that rage power, to defeat Dormammu in some way, Doctor Strange then pulls a classic, I know you think I'm a good guy, but really morality is very vague here in the Mystic Realms, and so I'm going to send you to the Crossroads of Infinity, and leaves him there, and that's sort of the end of that. And then that opens up where he finds himself from the Crossroads onto some planet where Captain Marvel shows up, or something like that. You can always tie these things together if you're just making it up on your own.
Perfect, Jack. You and I do that all the time.
We just make it up as we go along.
Yeah.
The Robin Jack universe.
Right. We can make everything fit together. I'm looking at the list as we're talking here. I just kind of keep looking over the list, and I've got two things open on my browser here. I actually had three. I had the League of Geeks open because you had the announcements on there. Right now, I've got Newsarama where it's got the breakdown. Then I've got this other thing on Newsarama where it has all of the slated movies, and this is talking DC and Marvel, and it puts them in order. And it's interesting because as you're talking about this World War Hulk thing and Captain Marvel, and we were talking about how things fit together, I'm starting to get some other thoughts here. Like, one thing I noticed is the order of the Infinity Wars. When you look at the list that they give you, it talks about 1 and 2, and then it looks like these other things come after it. But really, when you look at it this other way, you see that you've got Avengers Infinity War Part 1, then Captain Marvel, then the Inhumans, then Part 2, thus ending Phase 3. And it's interesting because when you look at that, you've got 8 movies plus 2 Avengers movies as part of Phase 3, meaning Phase 4, which is definitely on their slate, I could see them going off planet and doing a World War Hulk at that point. I mean, there's a
Well, sure.
lot of things they could do at that point. And I think going back and doing like a Daredevil movie and all that, those are street level. That's what you're using Netflix for.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I'd love to see a Daredevil movie, I don't think we're going to get it. I think we're going to get it as these Netflix series. I think space is the cinema, street level is is at home.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking, as far as the Hulk goes, I mean, they've already rebooted that a couple times now. Do you think they're really going to go back into that? I think they've gotten really comfortable with kind of including him.
Oh, I think they will at some
with the
point.
Avengers.
I think they rebooted it once, and was it totally a reboot? Weren't there references in that movie to the first one?
Well, yeah,
You can make an argument.
There were, but
Yeah,
you know,
but
there's-
I think if they did it again, it's not a reboot. That's part of this world. When we did that breakdown this summer, we included it in the first phase of the MCU.
but business wise, do you think that there's enough money to justify a third Hulk?
I tell you what, if he steals the show like he did in the first Avengers, heck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, what Guardians
it's-
showed us is that there's enough money for any character that they want to put out there, and the Hulk certainly has his own fan base.
But
You know-
my point is that's exactly what makes the Avengers so successful, is because you're tying all these fan bases together, and once you separate them out for things that have already had 2 or 3 of their own movies, I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
When
but
you've
think
got
about
so many.
the Hulk that we got in the Avengers. It left everybody wanting more. If
Mhm.
you kept with that feel of the Hulk and built on that, I think you would have a killer movie. Now, is World War Hulk the answer? I think you're getting kind of weird there. I don't know. And it's just like, as soon as I say that, I go, oh yeah, I want that to happen.
Right.
You know, the thing about the Marvel Studios, and this is where Marvel is at such an advantage over everyone else, except possibly Warner Brothers, who has the whole of DC's catalog, is that Marvel's got this big catalog that they can pull from. A much bigger, I mean, even though everyone says, oh, but they're all second and third tier characters, it's like, yeah, but they're all theirs.
Right.
They can, and all it takes to make a third tier character or first tier character is to write a good story for them.
I mean, like Star-Lord that nobody knew, and now
Now
you can't go a
he's
day without thinking about Star-Lord.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, and that is what Guardians told us. That is what Guardians showed us, is that they could do another Howard the Duck film if they wanted to at this point. I
But they
doubt
do it
they
if
will.
I wanted them to, because then that means it's going to happen.
I'll tell you what, if you have $100 million just lying around that you want to go to Marvel and say, I will put up $100 million to make a Howard the Duck film in the MC universe, they may take a meeting with you.
Hey, Jack, I have a proposal for you. You got $100 million?
Yeah.
Let's take a meeting.
I'll take a meeting with you.
It involves a duck. You heard me
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
But that's also what works against a Black
Like a
Widow
little-
film or a Hulk film, because and essentially what you have is you say, okay, so we could make a Black Widow film, but we'd have to pay Scarlett Johansson, who right now is super hot, as
In
an
more
actress.
ways than one.
I was going to say,
As an
yeah.
actress.
Everybody
She's
agreed
very-
with that one.
Very,
we all just
very
geeked out.
big. And as much as they know they could make money on it, they could say, should we can use Scarlett Johansson's star power to build up another film. So we can put her again in Cap 3. We can have her show up in Ant-Man. We can have her show up in Doctor Strange. We can have her show up in Black Panther.
Okay,
And
but
she's-
what about the rumors? And this was actually more than rumors. A couple of months ago, when Feige said we are actively pursuing a Black Widow film,
Well, I mean, it may not be.
did that
we've got all-
change?
It may not be within the next couple of years. They may just, with all this slated, say, look, this is 2016, 2017.
So you're thinking they might do her in Phase 4? I'm afraid we're going to have the Black Widow with a walker at that point.
Yeah. Well, what he later clarified what he said, and what he came back to was, look, we're developing everything, and yes, Black Widow could be in there, and
Thank you, Kevin Feige.
but
Please do that.
we're not actively building out. Here's the thing: they may actually be debating it, and they're looking at the numbers, and they're talking to Scarlett's agent, And Scarlet's agent say, well, look, if it's her name on the picture, she wants this. And they're like, well, do we want to build into that? I mean, that's the thing. They can move these films around whenever they want, and they can put anything out there. I think that they may be looking at characters like Black Widow, like the Hulk, like Hawkeye, and saying, these characters are really powerful to help build out our weaker characters. Okay. So, for example, and Black Widow has been around the Marvel Universe. She has had a relationship with Daredevil. She's had a relationship.
I mean, come on, who hasn't?
Yeah, well,
Floozy.
Hey,
you mean Daredevil, right?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely, Daredevil. That it's very interesting. I was actually doing the math on this once, and like Steve Rogers has actually had more
nerd alert,
sexual partners
nerd alert
than most anyone else in the Marvel universe.
Really?
Yeah, because he's 100 years old.
We better get him tested.
Hey, you know what, Alil? I give you 100 years. You're still not number one.
Yes,
Oh man,
it's amazing when you realize that. But yeah, he has actually been really around the block a lot, but he never gets called on it. Because he's Captain America, he's Mr. All-American. But he actually has had more than his share of girlfriends. Black Widow has had a few boyfriends as well, although you don't really know how many of those relationships were sexual and how many of those relationships were manipulative. For example, in the original comics, I don't know if her relationship with Hawkeye was ever really physical, so much as just her original manipulation of him, and then later a close friendship. I don't know if they did have a romantic relationship in the comics or not.
Okay.
So you think she's giving him the friend speech?
Well, that was her thing. Black Widow, when we first see her, she is the
Hawkeye. It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, well, she's a typical honeypot. She would lure in, unsuspecting men, manipulate them to go after Tony Stark because she was his villain, and
then eat their heads.
As often happens
Widow.
in Marvel, when a villain gets really popular, they turn them into a hero, and that's how she wound up on the Avengers. Was and of course Hawkeye in the same way. Was a villain, becomes a hero, etc., etc. Because when they get good, then Marvel wants to make more money off of them, and you make more money off of a hero than you do a villain.
Is it just me, or speaking of Hawkeye, does it seem like in the past couple movies he just didn't have as central a role, but they feature him a little more in the previews of the next movie?
Well, I would say, haven't they said that in Ultron he has a prominent role? So just as Cap 2 was kind of featured Black Widow, I think Ultron is going to kind of feature Hawkeye. We're going to get a bigger story out of him.
All right. It kind of looked that way. I noticed, he really wasn't featured as prominently. We kept kind of bringing him up, but
what happens to these new guys? What happens to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch? I mean, where do they fit into all of this? Because you don't launch with those two guys and then just drop it.
Maybe they gently introduce them, or maybe it's a whole other storyline altogether.
Well, most likely they do the heel face turn in the film, where they're starting out in the bad guy role, but then they join the Avengers.
They just disappear until the next Avengers movie, or what do you think?
Well, there's a good chance they could show up in Cap 3, especially if Cap is forming his own Avengers, because of course Cap's Avengers are Hawkeye, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch.
Oh, yeah.
And so then you have an event. You can have a Stark Avengers of Thor, Hulk, or Banner, and Tony Stark, and probably Black Widow as well. And then you have, which of course gives you a nice little split between Black Widow and Hawkeye, and then Hawkeye with Cap's Avengers. And of course, it looks like all the power's on Stark's team, but of course, Cap proves himself actually to always be the smartest guy in the room and winds up outmaneuvering Stark in the storyline in some way, and they wind up, and of course, then they all come together at the end to fight the real enemy of, let's say, the Red Skull, and that's how movies are made.
I don't think.
Oh, thanks.
I don't think Thor is going to have any part of Civil War, because they said that he somebody asked him about Thor because they were talking about Ragnarok, and Feige said that Avengers 2 will lead right into Ragnarok. So we won't. I don't think we're going to see Thor in the Civil War. I think his story is going to continue after whatever happens to him in Avengers 2. They keep showing him in that water scene because he's all like drenched and wet and.
Okay, we know what scene.
Little
you
something
like.
for the ladies.
But
I was like, I already have the poster.
So what do you
Gotcha.
guys think about Cap? There were rumors that he was going to be replaced by the Winter Soldier.
still could happen.
I think that'll happen at the end of Cap 3. I think that Steve Rogers dies there. And
in Civil War?
Yeah, at the end of Civil War. And
yeah, I think it's
and then
possible.
by the time the next Avengers happens, we've got Winter Soldier taking over for him.
Right. You got a perfect opportunity to say, hey, we've got an opening.
And the Falcon going, damn, I thought I was, damn.
And you know what they
Shaft.
could do here is
Oh,
we know nobody's ever dead, and because they only have Evans for the 6 films, so
Except for
Civil War would be
Coulson,
5.
he's, oh, wait a minute.
Exactly. I mean, in Civil War would be 5 for him. They can somehow resurrect him for the second half of the Infinity War.
Wait, resurrect Steve Rogers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I'd be bet on that one. I think we get one, the first part of the Avengers with Bucky as Cap, and then in part 2 he's resurrected. Do you think he'll come back as Cap, or do you think he'd come back as something else?
See, I'm not convinced on the Cap dying thing to start with. Just because it's something I think it's easier to do in the books because we're kind of used to it. I think it's a much harder. I think resurrections are a much harder thing to pull off in the movies.
Is it one of the Infinity Stones?
I thought the rumor was that he was really just tired of the workouts and maintaining that, just over and over, in and out every time there's a part for Cap. And
what was interesting is
if you bring him back, that pretty much defeats the purpose of retiring.
No, what bringing him back would do is, because he's only signed for 6 films, they don't have to renegotiate his contract. The 6th film is the final film in Phase 3.
Yeah, he just wouldn't be in there until
you're not going to be able to bring them all back for. That's why they were talking about that the Avengers are going to look very different in the next Avengers movie after Age of Ultron, which is why I think the first part of the Infinity War is you're going to have a different team, but then the second part, which is a year later, they're going to somehow bring back everyone.
Yeah, the original team is back.
Yeah, because you're right, and Jack, you're right. I mean, both him and Chris Hemsworth have said that they can't handle the workout and the intense training. I mean, even Hugh Jackman's been complaining about that.
Yeah.
Well, in truth, and Chris Evans did say that, and then all the talk started about, they're going to kill him off in Cap 2 or Cap 3, and then he actually issued a statement saying, well, don't kill off my character yet, please. And I think a lot of that goes down to part of negotiations, and the reality is that neither Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans is in the kind of position that Robert Downey Jr. was. Not only in the fact that he had other hit films, Robert Downey Jr. did, and
he did until The Judge.
Well, the judge is one of his vanity pieces. That's you get to do.
I don't think that negates anything.
Yeah, no.
It makes for a good joke.
It was never meant to be a blockbuster. That's his vanity film. It's meant he's meant to win an award for that, and not necessarily make money off it. That's what he uses his Avengers money to do. But the point is that Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth, they don't have the cachet to renegotiate as much as Robert Downey Jr. does. They have some, and so they'll get more money for their next 3 or 4 films after whatever they're contracted for.
Okay,
but thinking that they'll just walk. It's pretty hard to walk from the payday. It's pretty hard to walk from a very successful series. Right. And the physical demands, it's probably very, very taxing, but let's be honest here. These are men whose job it is to, be physically taxed for their performance. I mean, that is, I don't think either one of them necessarily, and this isn't to impugn them as actors, but I don't think either one of them are ready to move into the King Lear role. They're not ready to let themselves go to pot and be the aged hero yet. They're still young enough to be the young hero, and part of being the young hero is you've got to be in shape.
Or you could do Capital One commercials. Number one. I've retired and I sold credit cards.
You said you're retired, right?
I did.
Yeah, re something.
But I mean that's the thing. So I think that the thinking that either Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth are going to walk away is way overblown. I just think that it's not.
Well, I think we've
I don't
also
buy
seen
it.
that because, I mean, Robert Downey Jr. looked like he was walking away, and now he's right back at everything. And you're like, okay, if he's
Exactly.
not walking away,
Yeah, but how many actors can they afford to pay $40 million to?
well, if they keep
And-
making $1 billion each movie, I think they could do it.
And
Yeah,
you could be 50 years old and still be Iron Man, because when you're jumping around looking all muscular in a steel suit, you don't have to be in shape.
Note to self, audition for Iron Man role. Okay.
Note to self.
Yes. Well, but yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. I mean, I think that as far as being in physical shape, both Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans are much younger than Robert Downey Jr. They're in a much better physical position to keep that physical shape. And for what it's worth, they do have people for that to get them into shape for the movies and things like that. It's a very rough gig, but if they are paying you even $20 million, I think any one of us here would get into Chris Evans shape, Chris Evans style shape, if someone was going to give us $20 million to do it.
But at some point,
agree, but I think at some point you're looking at, so if we have to give him 20, Robert 40, Hemsworth 20, it then starts eating into profits of people who think that their characters are bigger than the actors. I mean, Chris Evans for Captain America: First Avenger made $300,000.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's not $40 million. So when you're looking at that, well, he made this movie for $300, and now he wants this kind of. Is he the draw?
But that's the thing, is like it's very easy to get caught up on how much they're paying Robert Downey Jr. I think it's important to remember Robert Downey Jr. is a very special case. And that's kind of my point. I don't think either Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth is in that position that Robert Downey Jr. was, where he can, bat his eyelashes and say, "Oh, I think I'm done. Let's let someone else be the center of the Marvel Universe now." And they're going to come with a checkbook open. I think if Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans does that, they're going to get something out of it, but they're not going to get. They're always going to be aware of the bottom line, and I don't think what they're making on the film is enough to walk away from it, because I think that having, I think if the film stopped being good, then they'll walk away. But so far they haven't had that, and so far each time they've gotten into the outfits, they've gotten great scripts and great stories to act out and tell and be a part of. And, for an actor, that's literally living the dream. You have a good story in a good film that, is making you a good bit of money. There's not really a downside to that, except for the physical activity, which they're going to have to do in any film they do. If Chris Evans walks away from Captain America to go do, random jumping spy guy, because that's what he'll be. He'll be the guy in a suit who punches someone. He still has to be in shape for that role.
Right.
Whatever role he takes, he's still going to have to be in shape for that role. So,
yeah, but there's a difference between in shape and superhero shape.
Yeah, I think he's already made the complaint. So, it's inevitability. Does it happen now or does it happen later? The other thing too is, at some point he's going to have to get another role, or he's forever Cap.
I think he's already forever Cap.
Yeah, it could be.
He's been in 3 movies, and before this, he has not been anything blockbuster significant. I mean, because I don't count Johnny Storm. I don't count all his
he was
bit
great
roles.
as Johnny Storm, though.
He's the only thing great about those movies,
He was great as Johnny Storm.
but he won't be remembered for that. I mean, he will always be at this point Cap because of what Avengers did and what his first two movies, after that or before and after that. So I mean, he's already in that role.
So you're kind of making the stand that he's going to milk this for every last penny it's worth, and he's going to be doing it another 10 years. Is that?
Well, I think it's twofold. I mean, I do think that right now Marvel has a lot of things up in the air, and this is why I think that they've split these two movies, because they owe a lot of money to a lot of people, and they have a lot of characters. You can't have all, by this time we're going to probably be close to 20 heroes. You can't have them all in the same movie and actually give them work. You can have them in a fight scene and stuff, but you're not gonna pay Chris.
But you're paying
Evans
a lot of money for one guy to go on screen and throw a few punches.
Exactly. So this is why my theory is that somehow half of these people are going to drop out in that first Infinity War movie, and then at the end of it, you can get them all in for cameos, for bit parts, for bigger roles, however you want to balance it. But it's going to be a balancing act, and it's got to be. This is where the internet kind of blew up for me, is when people were complaining that they made Infinity Wars Part 1 and Part 2 for the third Avengers movie. And it makes sense to me because they're going to film it at the same time.
Right.
The reason why, and everybody's like, oh, they're just milking money, or why are they doing this? I heard two theories. One, they're just milking it for the money and I'm like, why don't they just call it Avengers 4? I'm like, would it matter either way? They're telling the same story, but instead of putting out a 5-hour movie, they're giving you 2.5-hour movies.
Well, and also if they called it Avengers 4, wouldn't that also imply they're going to wait 3 years before they do the second part?
Exactly. I mean, these are being filmed at the same time because they're going to tell one cohesive story.
Yeah, and I'll take a nice 5-hour story.
Yeah, and I won't believe it. I'll keep marathoning it on DVD.
The last 45 minutes are going to be everybody leaving, seeing the hobbits off, waving at them, standing on the pier.
But I think they're going to continue.
Boat, a magical ship,
yeah. Oh God.
They're already talking about.
The other theory is, do you think because after this there's nothing announced, and Feige has said he's got a roadmap to 2028. But could this be the end of this Marvel universe? Because we're opening up Doctor Strange, and he had also said that with opening up Doctor Strange, you also open up for alternate universes.
Right? Could that be the end of this? And we kind of, I don't want to call it a reboot, but we're somewhere else.
Right.
I think. Well, I'm going to say no, because that defeats the entire purpose of the MCU. The whole purpose of the MCU, just like the whole purpose of the 616, is to have this continuing story. And you may reboot things, you may recast an actor or whatever, which they've already done with Bruce Banner 3 times now. You can recast the person, you can change things, but it's always going to be the MCU. Because I think that it would defeat the purpose to go reboot it, because simply put, you have all these other films out there.
Well,
so we've got our first
you refocus on who your main players are.
Exactly. So we're establishing the Black Panther film. So maybe in Phase 4, we're going to have Black Panther as the central hub character of the film, and how he's going to be moving his chess pieces across the board as the counterbalance to whatever evil forces are in the Marvel universe at that point, and then and maybe you'll get Captain America or Iron Man making cameos and Hulk popping by for tea.
They're already talking about Hulk being in the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie. That he may make an appearance, and that was from, I think, that was rumored. Rumors. There's all sorts of things you can pepper in these guys.
Well, I mean, there's rumors for everyone. I mean, and Hulk would be great. I mean, Black Widow would be great in Guardians of the Galaxy. I think just about anyone would want to watch any film where any Avenger meets any of the Guardians of the Galaxy or vice versa.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all want to see Rocket Raccoon and Tony Stark exchanging bombs. You know,
Oh, please make that happen.
you know, I mean that's going to be fun, and you know, and Drax versus Hulk or Gamora versus Black Widow or however they want to slice and dice them. You know, it's what will be interesting is seeing if we get Guardians of the Galaxy 3000 into the mix. You know, if we ever get Vance Astrovic in there. You know, although Vance Astrovic is he's one of those mutants who is also in the Avengers. So he's one of those ones that they can actually use if they want to put a mutant in there.
So there's a better
The character
chance
of
that could
Justice,
happen.
and who later becomes Major Victory, I believe they call him, when he finds Captain America's shield in the year 3000 with the Guardians of the Galaxy of that era.
Well, and I guess that goes to my point. I understand what you're saying, that it wouldn't be the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but at some point they're going to have to look at this and readjust what they're doing. I mean, because they're on a path right now it seems stable as a business and as a unit. And I understand in the comic book universe, because we're talking about, you know, you were comparing to 616, but that's completely different because you're able to, you know, you're putting out books a month at a time. You're doing these things are 3, 4, and at some point it's going to get to a point that these movies are going to cost more than it is to put out. So I do think that there is a chance that this universe, and I don't want to say collapses upon itself, but it gets redone, you know, because all of a sudden the focus is different overall. And
Well, they
that's why
had said a
In
while
the
ago.
Feige article in Business Week, I told Rob about. I don't know if anybody saw that, but his philosophy that he took to Disney is, look, we already have the storyboards, we already have the material. His plan, the way he said it in the article, was not to stray from the MCU. We already have things that we know work and are popular and speak to people, and I don't know that it's going to get much past that just from what he said.
Well, but what they can do is in Phase 4, the Avengers are no longer the central characters. It's now the Defenders, for example.
That makes sense.
Right. And
And
think
so
that's
now it's going to be the
very-
Defender story in Phase 5 through 9.
I very
So
much
not a
think that's
rewrite,
what's
but
gonna happen.
Defenders,
a refocus.
They're going to, they'll focus on the champions, or they'll come back to the Avengers, but it's going to be a whole brand new group of Avengers, you know. And that's the thing, is that the Avengers roster is always shifting, you know. And you can have Cap in there, you can have Cap out of there, you can have Captain Marvel leading the Avengers, you know. And it's Captain Marvel and Scarlet Witch and, you know, Black Widow, because she's still around for some reason, and, you know, then you throw in the Forgotten One and you know, Paste Pot Pete. What the heck?
Squirrel Girl, come on.
Squirrel Girl. It could happen.
Hey, she was in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon on Disney XD. I was
Yes,
glad
she
to find that
was.
out.
Which
Yeah,
means
she wasn't very good at her job in it, and that was Spider-Man was not pleased with working with Squirrel Girl. She defeats the Juggernaut, but does a lot of collateral damage in doing so, and you know, doesn't understand the difficulty of being a superhero very well.
that's because
you have
she's a
to actually
freaking
protect stuff.
squirrel girl. Let's face it.
She gets easily distracted.
Yes, she does.
Well, she always wins. She is the most powerful super.
Until she
superhero
accidentally
in
runs
the-
out on the road and gets hit by a car, because they all end up getting hit by a car at some point.
Oh, way to bring down that party.
Yeah.
No, you know, the reality is the sky's the limit. They can do any character, they can do anything that they want to, because they have that backbench. They can, you know, they can do, you know, they can change things if they want to after they've done it. But I think they're always going to have this idea of the established MCU that's going to, you know, go from Captain America through Agent Carter up to Ant-Man and on into the Avengers and then beyond. You know, I think that's all going to be a continuous one universe story that they're telling. And I think that one of the things that like they're going to be doing with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., with Agent Carter, with the Netflix series, is they're building out they're building out that universe. They're building out all the little nooks and crannies of that, so that when you get to something like Civil War, you have a lot more built into that universe that is going to be dismantled. And you're going to have and it's not to say you can't come into it without watching these things, but it's for the fans, they're going to know, oh, this is why that's happening, and that's how these all connect. And that's the beauty of the MC universe is its connectedness. And why I think, like I said, I think you're going to see this with this rapid deployment of films. Each film is going to have some kind of tie to the next, either to the immediate next or the one after it, like they did with Thor into Guardians, skipping over Captain America. So Thor doesn't tie to Captain America, but it ties directly into Guardians. And then Captain America doesn't tie into Guardians, but it goes right into Avengers 2.
Sure.
So, I mean, that is how they're going to have these expansions. So whatever you have at the end of one, it's going to feed into the next set coming up. And, there's no reason they can't keep on doing that forever, because they have that many characters to tell the story of. And that goes back to the idea of the Black Widow and the Hulk movies, where you say, oh, well, I'd love that. Of course you would. You would really love to see that. And you would probably really love to see a Daredevil movie and a Luke Cage movie. And,
yes.
And probably if I told you they were going to do a White Tiger movie, you'd say, I have no idea who that character is, but I want to see it, I'm talking about the 70s White Tiger, not the new one. Because everyone knows who the new White Tiger is.
Everyone but us. Hey, I got a question. Off topic. We were talking about a character. It was like a white, like Yeti character.
The Wendigo.
Wendigo, yes.
Okay.
Yes, the Wendigo is it's actually in Native American folklore of the Pacific Northwest.
It was actually, there was a Wendigo on Sleepy Hollow last night. Yes.
Yeah, Marvel doesn't own the Wendigo. The Wendigos are public domain. So anyone can have a Wendigo. And basically what defines them is they are, if you eat human flesh, you can become a Wendigo. And Wendigos do nothing but eat human flesh. And when the wind howls, it goes, Wendigo! And that's their sound. So when you hear the wind howling, hide your children because Wendigos are coming.
Excellent.
There you go. That's what Sky's father is. He's the Wendigo.
All right. You called it.
We've got
Namor. We've got the Wendigo. We'll see.
Could be a Celestial. Could still be an Inhuman, since they're going to roll out the Inhumans.
I believe I may have been the one championing that for quite a while.
Yes. Although, I'll say
Sky's
this.
father's alien.
I don't know. Why would he work with Hydra then? It just it's just so bizarre.
No, her mom's alien.
Your mom's alien.
Hell.
But remember, the Inhumans aren't aliens. They're humans. They're from Earth.
Right. But she's got alien blood, they said. So that's why
that's the thing I always get back to with these things. I don't think any of these things, because they keep on saying, oh, it must be alien. It must be alien. I think that's going to be the big reveal that no, none of it's alien. It's just that on Earth, there are these ancient hidden cultures with these amazing, and really when you think about it, Wakanda is an ancient hidden culture that's incredibly advanced technologically,
right?
But that most people don't know about, and people don't know about because it's hidden and it's keeping itself off the radar, and it's hidden because it wants to be hidden, and that's of course what the story of the Inhumans were. They were always here; they just didn't want to be found. They were in Attilan, up in the Himalayas or the Himalayas, depending on how old you are.
Well, not to beat a dead dog, but I think what they're saying was Coulson said to Sky, I think the reason that you didn't have a reaction is because of reaction to alien DNA.
Right.
And I think that's why people, otherwise, anybody would, if these cultures are hidden within the group, then why wouldn't a much bigger population be immune?
It's an assumption that the blue guy is alien.
I think that's a pretty reasonable assumption.
Not really, not in the Marvel universe, because the blue guy could very well be an Atlantean. And of course, the Nazis very big into Atlantis, very big into studying the lost cultures of Earth and the Supermen of Earth. So they found in that and dissected him is very reasonable to consider.
It's a possibility, but I don't think the show has ever been that subtle to where if they say, we think you have alien DNA, within about 3 or 4 episodes, we're going to find out that she's some sort of relation to an alien. Well, is it human alien?
Except they've been teasing it, and they've never actually really given us a definitive answer to it being alien yet. And we actually had from Sif the statement that the Kree, who everyone assumes the blue guy is, have never been to Earth. So if the Kree have never been to Earth,
then what's he doing here?
What's he doing here? And you could say, well, he's a lost Kree or whatever. But of course, and that's now to go into the Inhumans. The humans do have Kree DNA, but again, they are from Earth. They are terrestrials. They are human beings advanced by the Kree with Kree DNA. So he could be an Inhuman with that Kree DNA. So even if that is a Kree, Skye,
wouldn't that mean?
Wouldn't
that mean the Kree were here then? If they are advancing humans,
that would be the argument, and that which is why it goes into a little circle there. So you could go there, and it could just be that Sif didn't know that because it was before her time. We don't know really how old Sif is, and the Inhumans have been around for centuries. The Inhumans are roughly about as old as the Eternals. They are, from the early time of man, like the caveman times, that these aliens came here and started messing with humans, and then they just all forgot about it. They walked away. But then again, that's the whole cosmic time frame thing. If the Celestials, definitely that they don't have to come right back. They can come back in a million years, and it's like a week to them.
I don't think that they're going to go that deep with this. I think it's I'll kind of stand with they're going to link her with some type of alien, and I think they have way too many fish to fry to kind of go into the whole kind of all the others. If you went, let's say you went that other way, there'd be way too much to go with that. Way too many storylines that you would have to establish to
get to that point. Sure.
To get to that point, it would just be way too complicated. I think we're putting the whole
watch them do it in one line of dialogue and everything works, and then we're like, oh yeah, or you could do that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I don't think Atlanteans are any harder to explain than aliens. To me, the fact that they keep on saying, "Oh, it must be alien," tells me, maybe it's not. Because if they're going to hang a lampshade on it that obviously, to me, that's a misdirection.
Sure.
I don't know. It worked. It worked for Get Smart.
Everything worked for Get Smart.
That was what was the X? I forget. It was like X-22, and what's that? He says, "Well, you just ask him if they're a spy."
Oh, right.
Are you a spy? No. Oh, he's clear for me. All right. Well, talking about a dead horse.
Okay.
Yes.
I got 2 more quick things. Well, one of them's not so quick, but I'm going to make a real quick one here. I just wanted to give a shout out here. We got a tweet that I had tweeted out just before we went on, and I said that we're going to be recording, and if anyone has any questions or comments, let us know. We would definitely bring it up. And right away, I thought this was a good one. Christopher Borky wrote in. He's one of our fans. He tweets with us during the live tweeting quite a bit. He wrote, everyone thought the leaked Age of Ultron trailer would hurt today. Not in the least. The MCU won big today, as did all of us. That deserved a retweet and a favorite. Chris, that was awesome. You are totally right. So I just wanted to give a little shout out there. That was one of the 2. Here's the second one. I thought for sure, that today was going to be the announcement of Spider-Man getting used in the MCU. What do you guys think? It didn't happen, but do you think that is a dead issue? Because I do not.
You could talk a million years about that.
I know. I just want to get, because we've talked about it before, but I want to get the temperature now that this day has happened. Do you guys think that, that's really not, maybe in the future, but that's not really what's happening? Because lately there's been a lot of buzz about it. Do you think that we could be getting another announcement? Or do you think maybe they do like Apple and they do one of these big conferences every year and that one's saved until next year as we got one more thing. Boom.
Yes. Well, as I've said, Marvel doesn't need Spider-Man. Marvel would love to have Spider-Man, but it's not something that they're going to chase right now. It's completely in Sony's court. If Sony wants to have Marvel would love a crossover. They'd love to have Spider-Man swinging in the background just to show that Spider-Man's there. But the rights issues for Sony, and really it's all about Sony, because anything that Sony gives, and you got to remember that, Disney's like Hydra. It is a gigantic mouse with his gloved hands and everything, reaching out into infinity. Any door they open, Marvel can take, So if they let Spider-Man in, well, now that means that maybe a lot of secondary Marvel Spider-Man characters that they would have had can now come in. Like I said, you can have the New Warriors, you can have Speedball, which are arguably in the Spider-Man universe in certain ways. And now they're back in the Marvel house because we put that Spider-Man in the background.
Oh yeah, okay.
So Marvel would love that, but Marvel doesn't need that because they have enough other characters without it. Sony has to protect their egg because that's all they have. They have these. They don't even have what Fox has, and Fox is limited too. But they at least have a relatively deep backbench of mutants, and they have, quite frankly, a lot of cosmic stuff that they have dual rights to in the Fantastic Four. Which, we'll see how much longer they hold on to the Fantastic Four after the current iteration. But, because that is either going to be the most Fantastic Four film ever, or it's going to be just the death knell in Fox's ownership of it. Because I think it will be like Daredevil, and it will just
if it dies, I think that there's a real good chance that reverts back to Marvel at some point.
Well, it absolutely does. If it dies, it goes back to... That's what happened with Daredevil. It died and it went back to Marvel. Because there just wasn't... And then, of course, once Marvel got it, they put it onto Netflix. They said, okay, so we're going to do something with this now. Because once Marvel gets it back, they can immediately put it into production. They can immediately know how they're going to fit it into that universe, because they probably have been planning that.
Right.
They probably have a spot for Spider-Man in their list, but they just don't have him yet. But if he ever comes back, they know exactly where they're going to put him. Because
if they keep on the trajectory they're on, they're going to get him back.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question legally, because do they have to make Spider-Man films to keep Spider-Man?
Yes.
Okay.
No, and there's an interesting answer by Lil.
They do not have TV rights to Spider-Man.
No, but what I mean is, so for example,
wish we did, because I've got an idea.
So, for example, if they do, as I suggested, that the female Spider character they do is Spider-Girl, and they get Tobey Maguire back to play Peter Parker as the grown-up Peter Parker, father to Spider-Girl who's lost his leg, all that story. Get the band back together from the good Spider-Man films to tell the story of Mayday Parker, and then it becomes the Spider-Girl franchise. Do they still own Spider-Man and all the other Spider-Man characters?
Right, or is it this
Will they
other
expand
thing?
it, or do they eventually, if they just tell Spider-Girl, or just tell a Venom story, or just tell a Sinister Six story, do they run the risk of, well, no, your contract says you have to make a Spider-Man film, not a Sinister Six film? So that's an interesting question legally that I can't answer, because obviously it has to do with whatever the contract signed that they signed with Marvel back when they got the character. But so Sony has no interest in giving Marvel anything with Spider-Man, and Marvel has no need to bring Spider-Man back. They'd love to have him. He is their flagship character, but they don't need him because they have enough other characters to tell any Spider-Man story that they want. They can introduce Speedball, and there's your teenage superhero with issues character. They can. They've got tons of them.
Yeah, but Speedball is not Spider-Man. I mean,
no, but you know what? Neither is Rocket Raccoon, and he's doing pretty well. That's kind of the thing. They would love to have him. We're pretty
far from a standalone Rocket Raccoon movie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think right now there's too much credence given to the fact that Guardians did so well. Guardians did so well because it was a perfect storm. You had James Gunn, who is wacky, who comes from a wacky background with his Tromaville. You had a comedian actor in Chris Pratt that was bursting at the seams. that doesn't mean every one of these secondary and third type characters are going to hit. Same with Iron Man. It was Downey Jr. that made Iron Man what it was. You throw in 90% of the other actors, do you think that Marvel is in this same $1 billion+ movie with the Avengers? I don't think so.
Well, let me say this. What made Guardians of the Galaxy big was that it had a great story, great effects, and great actors, and a great director. The point is that the characters that they used for that are secondary. So if they get a great actor, a great director, and a great writer on the Speedball film, and they hype it well, like they did with Guardians of the Galaxy, and run it in a sweet spot in the calendar, Speedball can become Spider-Man. I mean, it's just that simple. Yes, it could all have the wheels come off, but so far they seem to have their formula and they know how to work it. So when you say, well, how much does Marvel need Spider-Man? I think right now Marvel is saying, you know what? We don't need our flagship characters right now.
Well,
we'd love to have them, but the fact of the matter is that Iron Man, wasn't a flagship character when we started. He is now the flagship character of Marvel as much as Spider-Man is, if not more so. And so I don't think they're chomping at the bit to get Spider-Man back. I don't think Sony is foolish enough to let him take Spider-Man. I think that they're, I mean, this is just my own personal assessment of it, but it just seems that, Marvel has cracked the code. And until they make a really bad Marvel film, until we get another Ang Lee Hulk, I think that it's a safe bet to say that they're not going to be worrying about whether or not they have Spider-Man. Because, the one thing that the Ang Lee Hulk showed us was that you can have a really recognizable character, and if you don't tell the story right, it will fall apart. Because, going in, the Hulk was way bigger as far as a character that people knew, way bigger than Iron Man or Captain America. But of course, Ang Lee kind of stepped on that. And and as a fan of film, I actually really like the Ang Lee film because I like his visual language. But I know why it failed. I know why it failed in the audience, because it didn't tell the story well. And that's the thing, and that I think is one of the reasons why Sony is kind of in this tight spot, because they had something that was pretty good going with Sam Raimi in his singular vision for Spider-Man. But I think they want to do more than have that singular vision. And since they only have a singular character, it's very hard for them to expand beyond that singular vision. And I think what Marvel is doing is they're figuring out how to do 10 different views in this one universe, how they can have this one universe and they can look at it from the spy angle, from the comedy angle, from the cosmic angle, from the straight adventure angle, and so from their perspective, like I said, they don't need Spider-Man. They need just the next character. They can do a Daredevil film.
So like whoever it is, sure.
Yeah, that is pretty dang close to a Spider-Man film right there.
I don't see it. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think you are giving enough credit to how big just Spider-Man is. I mean, Marvel is the one who backed up the money truck to renegotiate the deal with Sony so they can get some additional rights for marketing and merchandise and the cartoons and things like that, because Sony owned all that before. That's why they had the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon. That's why MTV had that terrible CG cartoon that they did.
So bad.
And it was Marvel that they knew they needed pieces back of this character. This character transcends from children to adults. And that's the thing. Daredevil is not going to have that same kind of transcendence. You're not going to see 50,000 kids in America wearing Daredevil t-shirts because of the Daredevil movie. Guess what? They already did that movie, and that movie did not work that well. And I'm not saying.
Well, they didn't do that movie. Someone else did that movie.
Well, I know.
I
understand, but what I'm saying is they geared that movie following up the Raimi Spider-Man, and that's what they wanted. And guess what? It didn't go that way. Not only because the movie was bad, but because it's not a character that holds up to Spider-Man. Iron Man, they were able to develop into that character. Rocket Raccoon is that kind of character for the Guardians of the Galaxy because he's a little fuzzy raccoon guy. And believe me, I know because my 3.5-year-old son wants to be Rocket Raccoon for Halloween and loves Rocket Raccoon.
Yes.
But the thing is I still think, throwing in characters like Speedball and all these other characters, these characters will never achieve the heights, even in cinema, where Marvel knows if they got their hooks into Spider-Man. And I do think there is backdoor negotiations going on right now between both companies because they have worked out these deals in the past.
Right.
To get
That's
this
what I
character.
think,
Because Spider-Man, that name alone generates that buzz. A terrible Spider-Man movie still made $700 million worldwide.
But see, that's the Spider-Man trap, and I almost wish we hadn't opened the door because it's 20 minutes later and we're no closer to answering the question than we were before.
Yeah, well, that's there
because
is no
on the
answer
one
that we can
hand-
actually have.
Well, not really, because on the one hand, you have the argument that Spider-Man is too valuable not to give back, yet it's too valuable not to give up. So, it's how, where do you go with that other than the fact that it's, conjecture and hope? I don't think there's anything that you can go. It's what do you call that? The Mobius strip. There's nothing you can do with that until something happens.
Right. I just wondered, the reason I posed it was I thought for sure with all that stuff that had surfaced recently about this, that there was going to be some hint today and something was going to come about. Now, there was a little tiny hint that was sent out on Twitter, but who knew what that was about? And obviously it didn't play into
Here's what it comes down to. As I said, and I don't want to say that Marvel doesn't want Spider-Man back. Marvel definitely wants Spider-Man back. Marvel would love nothing more than to have Spider-Man back.
I don't think that's...
it's just a question of, Sony doesn't want to give up Spider-Man because it is all they have. And Disney, whatever they want to spend to get Spider-Man back, it's less than Sony will take. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. Marvel is looking at it can look at it. Marvel would love to get Spider-Man back. They want Spider-Man back, but they're not going to get taken in the deal because they know at the end of the day, the value of Spider-Man, though incredible, isn't worth what it's going to cost them to get it back from Sony because Sony isn't going to let go of it because Sony
it's their only bone.
Yeah,
I disagree,
they also
though.
got a really good deal on it.
We've seen movie studios do this all the time with top characters. I mean, look at what MGM had to do with Bond. I mean, we've seen top characters leave studios because of monetary reasons or buyouts. And I think at this point, we're seeing it with Disney. Again, I go back to the fact that they threw extra money at Sony to get some of these smaller rights back for Spider-Man. So do you not think that in the end, I mean, Disney has already made the $4 billion back that it paid out to get Marvel. Do you not think that they can get even more, even if it costs them $1 billion to get just Spider-Man, that's worth it? I think especially
Not
in the long run, because you're not only
if it's
looking
worth $3 or $4 billion to Sony.
But you got to remember that there's two people in this negotiation. It might be worth $1 billion to Marvel to get Spider-Man back, but it might not be worth $1 billion to Sony to give up Spider-Man. And that's the crux of the biscuit. You have to have Sony interested in selling and Marvel interested in buying.
I think there is
interested as Marvel might be in buying, Sony isn't interested in selling.
I don't think that. I think we're already thinking. I mean, Sony lost money with Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2. And Sony is not making money off the merchandising for Amazing Spider-Man 2.
And
if Sony
That's
was
very
making,
true.
If Sony was making Marvel merchandising money, then I think we're talking a different game, because then you are right. But if Disney comes in, and I agree, just like you said, Jack, well, you know what, Sony thinks it's worth $3 billion of them. Then fine, go ahead, make another movie and see where it goes. And that's the game Marvel's going to play here. But I do think that there is going to be some kind of joint pack here, because both those studios, this is not a Fox Marvel situation where they hate each other. And you can tell that they hate each other. I think they're going to work something out here, and this is going to pay off in the end because Sony's not going to get the only thing standing in the way here is a Via Rod because he wants Spider-Man, no matter what he's in, to be the lead character.
Right.
But I think what we're missing out here is that Spider-Man's value all around is so much more to Disney because we are talking about a company that builds legacies. And they can invest $3 billion today for Spider-Man, and it will pay off hand over fist down the road because you're going to have Spider-Man in the theme parks. You're going to have Spider-Man.
The same reason same reason Disney paid out $4 billion for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But this is why I call it the Spider-Man trap, because you can't resolve any of these. You can't truly resolve any of these issues until something happens.
I think we've completely resolved it, Jack.
All right, so who do you agree with?
I agree with.
Exactly. There's nothing you can do. Spider-Man is it's like a sinkhole. Like, you remember the redneck that disappeared in the sinkhole and died? He was talking about Spider-Man.
Seems like the same sinkhole the Spider-Man movie was in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Hey, on a lighter note, it's midnight here, and it just became my birthday. And
Happy birthday, Jack!
Happy birthday,
you.
Jack.
Happy birthday.
I think I'm going to go celebrate by taking my dog out so she doesn't pee at night.
Okay.
She's got a little something for you. Put a candle in it. All right, you know what? Let's end it. We really did go off the rails. This was a long one, but it was necessary after all that news. Thank you, Jack, Alil, Charlie. This was awesome. Thank you guys so much. I say, really, that's just it. Tomorrow night, Alil, Jack, we get to record Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, and I have to stay up and edit and post this. So thanks for listening, everybody. And 24 hours from now, you should be getting another episode out of us. Until then, enough said.
Enough said.
Enough said.
Enough said.
If you would like to donate to help pay for this and other Southgate Media Group podcasts, simply go to our website, southgatemediagroup.com, and click on the donate button. It can be as little as $1 or, well, as much as you want. Help keep this fun going by supporting this and our other shows. Thanks again for listening, everyone. You're the best fans in the world.